Kevin Connors, ESPN SportsCenter anchor, joins us on the Yash and Zach Sports Hour. Thank you for taking your time and joining us, Kevin.
Guys, my pleasure. I'm happy to be on with you.
Yeah, looking forward to this show, Kevin.
Okay, so my first question to you is, Rex Ryan was recently on the hot seat for starting the season off 0-2 with a troubling loss against Baltimore and New York Jets. What do you think contributed to their struggles early on?
Wow, how much time do we have? I think, I think the fact that, number one, the game against the Jets, their secondary was just dominated by the Jets' big physical receivers, and that was surprising because the Bills have a pretty solid secondary, especially cover corners with Stephon Gilmore and Ronald Darby, who is coming off an outstanding rookie year. So that was surprising, and the Jets had their way with the Bills. I mean, the offense really struggled in week one against the Ravens, and so you're thinking, oh, my God, the offense stinks, and now the defense gets blown up by the Jets. And so the Bills made a change, and they fired the offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, and I know a lot of people were critical of that decision, and they said, why fire the offensive coordinator when you're coming off a game where you just gave up 37 points? But the fact of the matter is the offense had really been stagnant, and then those 31 points they scored against the Jets it was kind of fool's gold. And so I think that the shakeup was something that the team needed, and in a lot of ways, guys, it's breathed life back into this team.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And, just going, you mentioned Greg Roman being fired and relieved of his duties. He was fired and relieved of his duties after the loss against the Jets on Thursday Night Football 2 weeks ago. Was his firing justified? Do you think that they should have kept him, or what made the Bills, resort to that point where they had to fire him?
I just think I think that it was the showing against the Ravens in week one, and then on top of it, they score 31 points in week two against the Jets. But, two of those plays were on 70-yard touchdowns, which are not great indicators of how the offense is playing.
Yeah.
And one of those touchdowns was a defensive touchdown, and then the other one was in meaningless time in the final 2 minutes of the game. So you say, well, then, geez, for the rest of the game, they scored 3 points. And there wasn't much flow. They didn't seem to get the ball to their playmakers enough. And, they've got two bona fide offensive stars on that team with LaShawn McCoy and with Sammy Watkins. And so I think that it was the realization that they run a complicated scheme. The playbook is a lot to manage, and it was something that a change needed to be made, and Roman was the fall guy. In my opinion, it was the right change. And so far, through the past two games anyway, it's proven to be that way.
Mm-hmm. Because Greg Roman was the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league at the time. So, yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of money for having a very stagnant offense going in through the first 2 weeks.
Yeah. So, but following up on Greg Roman, do you think that how do you think that the new offensive coordinator Anthony Lynn has helped Tyrod Taylor, if any, and his offense? Because his offensive numbers have been good since Greg Roman was fired, and they're on a 2-game win streak right now. So how do you think that Anthony Lynn's being able to manage that?
I think he's sort of simplified things. I think it's been more of a direct approach where he likes the ground and pound. They've gotten the ball to LaShawn McCoy, gotten his carries up. I think they've sort of simplified things and allowed the offensive line to have better success here. And Tyrod Taylor has, they've allowed him to kind of get out of the pocket a little bit more and make plays with his feet. Mm-hmm. Look, you don't want to see a quarterback who's slightly built like Tyrod is. You don't want to see him running all over the field, but you also don't want to take away one of his great tools, which is his ability to run and make plays out of the pocket. So I think that they've kind of opened up things a little bit from that perspective, and they've simplified the playbook a little bit more. And again, the change has been something that's worked out. Now, of course, you've got to navigate the next few weeks, if not the rest of the season, without Sammy Watkins. Help comes back on the defensive side of the football with Marcel Darius coming off his suspension. So you're losing some firepower on offense, but you're gaining some on defense. And again, you're 2-2, and you're 1 game back of the Patriots in your division. a whole lot different from where we were following that Thursday night game in week 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're touching on the offense a lot with the improvements, but also one thing that was very interesting to watch as the Bills went 0-2 is that the defense was lacking, considering you had both Ryan brothers leading the defense and the play calling. However, the last 2 weeks against Arizona and especially last week against New England, we've seen a much more renowned Bills defense. What have the Ryan brothers changed in as well over the course of these last 2 weeks to help improve their starters improve and be more prepared for these opponents?
I think you've seen better linebacking play. Going into the season, the Bills had drafted Reggie Ragland, second-round pick out of Alabama, and he was going to be counted on big time to help out that linebacking core, which was a problem on that defense. And so then you lose him in training camp, and you think, man, here we go. It's a shot to that core, and it hurt the first 2 weeks. But I think you've seen better linebacking play over the past 2 weeks, and that's kind of allowed some of the pass rushers to get after the quarterback more. And the Bills led the NFL in sacks 2 years ago, and then last year they were towards the bottom of the league in that category. And previous 2 weeks, I think you've seen them get after the quarterback more, and caused Carson Palmer anyway to have to get rid of the ball a lot sooner. And then, of course, last week against Jacoby Brissett, I mean, you're going up against a rookie quarterback, third-string guy for the Patriots, and Gronk's not 100%. But I think you've seen a freer flow on defense, and pressuring the quarterback guys always helps.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, last week in New England when we saw them play against Brissett, it's not Tom Brady, as you mentioned or hinted at, but it was very much the linebackers had a lot to do, with that win. And, it showed. It delivered a 16-0 shutout over there in Foxborough.
Let's keep it going.
Yeah.
I'm a Bills fan, guys, living in the heart of Patriots country here in New England, and I've had my head kicked in for about a decade now. So it's nice to finally have bragging rights for a week.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Now, continuing on with one of the other key issues that the Bills have had over the last 2 years is actually penalties. Last year, Bills were one of the highest in penalty markers on the field. This year, they've also had their share of penalties. For example, Bills have had 10 penalties for 99 yards on defense and have had 29 penalties for a total of 283 yards so far this season. So how does Rex Ryan and his staff limit the amount of penalties? I know that this was a conversation last year, but what can the staff do this year to potentially fix that lingering issue?
Guys, if I had the answer, I wouldn't be working in Bristol. I'd be working in Buffalo. It's a great question. I half kidding, half jokingly last year said that they should hire, like a penalty specialist coach.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, like an offensive, an overall offensive quality control coach to monitor that, because it's infuriating. And Rex has a system where he wants guys to play and he wants you to get after it, and then the result of that is silly personal foul penalties or holding penalties or special teams penalties, which just drive you up the wall.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's a product of the system that Rex runs. He's a player's coach. He lets guys play. You want the aggressive playmaker, but you don't want the dumb player. And it's been a balancing act in Buffalo. I can tell you this much, as a fan, I'd love to see a lot less of it.
Right. Speaking of the way that Rex lets his players play, does it kind of remind him of his late father, and how his father would let his defense go at it? How you would see his dad, like for example the '85 Bears, how it was almost like the Bears, their defense was a separate team within Chicago. That spirit shows with the brothers. You would think.
Except the difference is the brothers don't have Mike Singletary and Richard Dent and William the Refrigerator Perry, or Reggie White and Eric Allen and some of those players that Buddy Ryan coached with the Eagles. And I got to work with Eric Allen for several years here at ESPN, and he raved about Buddy Ryan and the system there. And the Bills have talent on the defensive side of the ball, but it's not Hall of Famers at every other position. So, Yeah, I think, listen, the verdict is out on Rex. I want him to be the guy in the worst way because I love the personality, and I think that he is a good football coach, but the results speak for themselves. And, this Bills team is talented enough to be in the playoffs. The talent is on that roster. And if they don't get there, the head coach needs to be held accountable at this point. So
Right.
Let's hope that we're not having this conversation when the Bills are 7-7 at the end of the season, and we're wondering, is it time to make a change again? Because I like Rex, and I really do. I hope he works out, but the proof is in the pudding, and the Bills have not been to the playoffs, guys, as you know, in a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of Rex Ryan, as we have been the whole show, our final question for you in this interview is actually about Rex Ryan's job security. What is he? Is a playoff clinch? Is that what helps to maintain his job for next season, or is showing improvement going to be the final goal? Just trying to get above what was an 8-8 season last year.
The NFL is a league where if you don't have results, they're moving on. And, there's a new ownership group there in Buffalo, and Rex has, after this year, still 3 more years on his contract. But he can't wait anymore. And I'm not one for firing coaches and moving on and turning over the entire system on a regular basis like the Bills have done. But again, you've got Marcel Darius and Jerry Hughes and Stephon Gilmore and Sammy Watkins and LaShawn McCoy and Charles Clay, who you paid a ton of money to, and a solid offensive line. I mean, this is a team that should be a playoff team. And so I've said this since the end of last season. I said if the Bills don't make the playoffs this year, you have to look at making a change at head coach because the fan base has waited long enough. I mean, it's been since the 99 season since the Bills have last made the playoffs, and that is almost impossible when you think about how much things change in the NFL and how many teams make the playoffs. So for me, the talent is there, and the accountability has to be there for Rex as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And just one final question, Kevin. Rex Ryan this past week before playing the Patriots, he had a upbeat attitude. He walked in on a conference call with Julian Edelman, and he likes to talk against Bill Belichick. So how do you think that will affect him as a coach moving forward? His attitude, and he's so upbeat, and how do you think that's going to affect him, his job security, and his coaching style moving forward?
Right, because that's what listen, we when Bill Belichick gets up and gives a news conference, it's torture because he doesn't say anything, and there's no personality there. And Rex is the opposite, right?
Yeah.
Rex gives you everything you want. He's entertaining. He's funny. He's engaging. But you're not looking to have a head coach be the team stand-up comedian. You want your head coach to be a guy who gets results. So I love when Rex gets on the phone with Julian Edelman and tells him it's Walt Patulski from the Buffalo News and has fun with all that. But I also love it when Rex wins games. And so if he continues to do that, he can be Walt Patulski every single week, and I'm fine with that.
Well, Kevin, it's been a pleasure to have you on our show, and we want to thank you and we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us on this interview.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. Thank you so much for this. It's really an honor.
Guys, the pleasure is all mine. You do a great job, and please have me back sometime.
Yep,
Hey,
definitely.
We'll get into it.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.